Yeah. I have mine. I use my.
Huh, that's very weird. Don't understand that at all. Alright, let's see who's here. This. Yes, I huge. What a cat there is. It's Miss Peralta. Miss Peraltino, Miss Robin. You can see her, Miss Robbins. Miss Louise here. Stuck closer. That's it. Stuck closer. Where's Miss Closer? The desk. The Baker Walker. I saw her. Yes. Ms. Miller. Limbo. All right. Yeah, you have to do it. That's really. Let me just see it. It has to be. It must be wrong. All right. It's good to see you all. Please remember, quiz tomorrow. Quiz number 2 will be up tomorrow.
What do you say?
Quiz number 2 will be up tomorrow. You'll have a week to do it. What does the syllabus say?
I read this.
That's what the syllabus says. But check the syllabus, see what it tells you. Yes. Is that what it says in the syllabus? Good. That's fine. That's fine. Is that Miss Robbins? Miss Robbins.
Me too.
Quiz tomorrow, and the second thing is, do not forget that Tuesday is the spring break, part of the spring break. Not spring break, excuse me, the fall break. So please don't come to class on Tuesday. There is no class on Tuesdays for anybody. Yes? Okay.
And Monday. Give on Monday.
That's fine, sir. I appreciate that. Remember Monday as well. That's important. Let's see, Mr. Gaffney. Yes. What do we got going here? All right. Who was Jesus? You know, if they're holding class over there, are they off? Take the day off? Yeah, right. Who said that? Who said? Oh, that Ms. Lacey and Mr. Hinkle, yes. Hello, Ms. Franco Zamora. No! Because I love my work. I gotta work. Who was Jesus? The Christ, possibly a hymn, the Christ hymn, as I told you before. Most scholars will tell you that it's a song that Paul is quoting, so it predates Paul's material in his letter. But there's a small minority that does kind of read over the articles, a couple of articles on it. I have to read them more deeply, but from what I read, they seem to make a strong case that it's just an assumption that it's a hymn. But I'm going to go with the consensus view that it's a hymn because it's called the Christ hymn. But Stay tuned, because scholars could change their minds. But nevertheless, whatever it is, whatever genre it is, it still comes from Paul's letter to the Philippians, which was written in the mid-50s. It's still before the Gospels. And so it gives us this little inkling of what Christians were thinking about Jesus before even the Gospels were written down. So let's start. You can look in your Bible if you want to follow along, or look on your computer. And I just have some points in the hymn that I'm going to address myself. Let me get my Bible there. Yes. Bible. No, I want this for later, so I'm save that there for later. Philippians chapter 2. Philippians chapter 2. Where are we here? There we are. Okay. So look at verse 6. I'll start with the first apparent verse of the hymn. Jesus, who though he was in the form of God, did not regard equality with God something to be grasped, or something to be grasped at. Okay? I give you the Greek form. Morphe means a form. I forgot to do that. My mistake. Hold on. Morphe, and we have this word in English, to morph into something, or, what else? What else do we use it for? Metamorphosis. A metamorphosis is also just a Greek word for transformation. Okay? It kind of works with form, morphe. If you work it, it's kind of like reverse it, right? Morphe, form, right? It's kind of. Anyways, but morphe means a form, a shape, a figure. So Jesus is in the figure or the form of God, in the shape of God. Okay? Which I would take to mean, I don't think Paul is using it literally, because I know some things about Paul, that he's a Jew, and he's a rabbi, he's a teacher, so he knows the Jewish faith, and God does not have a shape in the Judaism that Paul would have been taught and would have taught. God is spirit, and he's formless in that sense. He doesn't have a shape or a body. At least not for Paul. So when he's using this word morphe from Greek, how is he using? Is he using in that sense? I think he means it more in the sense of the essential character, the essence. Jesus was of the essence of God, the essential character of God. Okay, he wasn't God. I don't think he's using it in the sense that God, he has a body or something. But he does have a body in Jesus. All right, Jesus has a God-like divine existence. How that works? Well, that's something Christians are going to have to think about that later. It's going to take about 3 centuries for Christians to start thinking about that. But he knows that Jesus has a God-like divine existence. He's not merely human. But he's not exactly God either. So he's... What is he then? Is he both? What is he? Half and half? Kind of a human, kind of a God? We're just fully human and that's it? But, he has the power of God? At this point, I think in early Christian theology or understanding of Jesus, I think the most they could probably, if I extrapolate, I wasn't there to ask Paul, but just from reading the writings, that I think the most you could hope for them to say was that, well, Jesus was human, yes, but he was more than human in some way. He wasn't fully, I don't want to say that. Well, they might have said he wasn't fully human. He was divine. He was godlike in some way. He was a human being, yes, but he acted like God. He could do things that only God could do. And I don't think they tried to explain it. They could just give their experience of what they witnessed and what they experienced of him. They're trying to understand him. And even as a divine figure, for a Jew, that would have meant the one God of Israel. But he's not the one God of Israel. He's distinct in a way. He's different in a way from God the Father, one might say. He's the Son. So even in his godliness, there's a distinction. He's not one-to-one the same as God the Father. So there are all sorts of things there that are going on. But still, the faith affirmation is this. He was in the form of God. He was equal to God. Because I say he was equal. But he didn't regard that equality as something to be grasped. This Greek word harpazo, okay, which I do the meaning here. To steal like a thief, to snatch it away from somebody. Like if I came up and I grabbed your phone from you, that's harpazmo, right, Ms. O'Brien? That's harpazo. I just harpazoed your phone, Mr. Palumbo. Yes. Maybe that will become a meme, Ms. Franco Zamora. Yeah. To show, a little video of someone stealing someone's cell phone and then, harpazo. So Jesus did not think that another way of translating this sentence of Paul or of the hymn is that Jesus did not think that his morphe as God, his form or shape as God, was a thievery, a kind of thievery, like he was stealing it. He was taking something he didn't deserve, that wasn't his own. He was the Son of God, so he deserved to be regarded as divine. However, what does he do? Go to verse 7. How does Jesus show that he doesn't regard it as something that he's taking that he doesn't have a right to? Nevertheless, he lowers himself. He empties himself. It's Greek word kenosis, which a lot of theologians love. The kenotic theology, Jesus empties himself. Well, that doesn't mean he becomes something other than he is. At least I don't think that's what Paul means. Like all of a sudden he's not God anymore. He lowers himself. He takes the form of a slave, a doulos, a slave, or a servant. You can translate it as servant because people try to avoid the word slave nowadays. But, whatever. They had slaves back then. It was a part of society. No one necessarily thought two seconds about it. It was just there. But Jesus enslaves himself to the human condition. He gives up his morphe as God and assumes a servant position, a lower position, the human position, where he accepts things like want and hunger and suffering and pain. Also the good stuff about being human, having a sip of wine every now and then. Thank God for the Jews. The God of Israel loves wine. And Jesus loved to have a good meal, It never says Jesus laughed, but I'm hoping he did. I think he did have a sense of humor from some of his parables, I think. But it doesn't ever say he laughed. But I hope he did. I'd like to think that he did. He smiled. At least smiled, Felt a nice cool breeze on his face, Looked at the mountains and the hillside, thought they were pretty. So I don't want to just emphasize the bad stuff of humanity, but the bad stuff, the sickness. He became enslaved to the human condition, ultimately even accepting the possibility of dying like any human. So the one who is like God now becomes like humans. So he takes the form of a slave, coming in human likeness and found in human appearance. Homoi oma. Okay, homoi, os in Greek means similar or like. Okay, so that's the basis for the word. Already, Ms. Wanamaker. It's not even lunchtime yet, Ms. Wanamaker. Yeah. So, similarity, exactly. Homoioma. He had a similarity to us. Okay, and this is an ambiguous word. This is an ambiguous word because, again, what does Paul mean by that? That Jesus, just like with morphe, what exactly does Paul mean? Well, what does he mean that Jesus becomes similar to us? Is he fully human then? Is he not fully human? He's only apparently human. He's similar to us, but not actually a human. He's God in the flesh, but his flesh is kind of like a costume, maybe. Don't know. Paul doesn't tell us, nor does the hymn explain it for us. It's just expressing the belief. Okay? Yeah, we don't know. It's an ambiguous term. That's something to take note of. It's not exactly clear what it means by Jesus is similar to us, even though it does kind of try to explain it with the next verse. How did he show his similarity to us? Death. He humbled himself. So it repeats that idea. He empties himself, but now he humbles himself. He lowers himself. Humus is dirt, okay, in Latin. So to humble yourself means that you get down on the ground and place your face in the ground, like to the dirt. You humble yourself, okay? Or you regard yourself as dirt, like the dirt that you walk on. You can, not exactly a great thought, Ms. Walker, but that's where the word comes from. But I can't change where the word comes from. Nevertheless, he lowers himself. He doesn't just empty himself, but he lowers himself. And he's obedient. Obedient to whom? God? I guess God. Obedient to other human beings? To the authorities? Earthly authorities? I don't know. Doesn't say. I'd assume God, but, whatever. God's plan. He becomes obedient even to accepting death. Even death on a cross. So here we have Ms. Jones, the shame of the cross coming up. He was obedient. He was willing to go accept the human condition, even to the point of being in humility, that he was so humble that he was willing to accept even a shameful death. Obedience. So that's his existence. I asked before, when we talked earlier, why did Jesus die? Why did Jesus die? Why was he killed? And I talked about the Jewish religious authorities, why some of them might have wanted Jesus dead. Talked about why the Roman authorities, like Pilate, probably wanted Jesus dead. Never really talked about how Jesus defined his death. Did he ever talk? And he does. Actually predicts it apparently 3 times. But he talks about how he views his mission in the Gospel of Mark. See if I can remember where. Yes, here it is. The Gospel of Mark, chapter 10. Chapter 10. Beginning with verse 35. The Gospel of Mark, chapter 10. Chapter 10, verse 3.
You say it was again?
Mark chapter 10, beginning with verse 35. I'm not going to read the whole thing except the ending, but just so you can follow along. Please see coming.
And James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him, and teacher, they said, "We want you to do for us whatever we ask him. What do you want me to do for you?" He asked. They replied, "Let one of us sit at your right, and the other at your left, and your right hand." "You don't know what you are asking," Jesus said. "You drink the cup I drink, and be baptized with the baptism I am baptizing." We Kevin answered. Jesus said to them, "You will drink the cup I drink, and be baptized with the baptism I am baptizing to sit at the right and left.
I know, Mr. Cummings.
These places belong to those for whom they will be good."
You want to stop there? Want someone else to pick it up?
Sure.
All right. Does anyone else want to pick up where he left off? Anybody got it? I'm gonna pick up. Yes. I should start off writing money. I started off writing this money. $5. Yeah, Ms. Audrey. Well, I already give you credit for class participation if you do so. I try to get you involved. What do you think, Ms. Wanamaker? Do you have it? Yeah, why don't you pick up where you left off, Miss? Please.
When the time heard this, they became indignant at James and John. Jesus summoned them and said to them, "You know that those who are recognized as Jews and the Gentiles lord it over them, and the great ones make their authority over them felt. But it shall not be so among you. Rather, whoever wishes to be great among you will be your servant, whoever wishes to be first among you will be the slave of all. For the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many."
Excellent. Okay, so we have this scene where two of Jesus's apostles come to him. These two guys, James and John, brothers. They approach Jesus. Notice what they say to Jesus. The first words out of their mouth. What do they say, Mr. Hinkle? Could you repeat the question? What do James and John say to Jesus? What's the first thing they say to him?
I'm with you first.
All right, that's fine.
First one?
I got you. We got it. All right, you're off the hook, Mr. Hinkle. For now. Business.
They asked him that they want him to do for them whatever they have.
What do you think about that? He thinks he's not going to see her. He'd think, ooh, a red letter Bible. Very nice. It's easier for me to see the word of Jesus. What do you think about that?
You trust him to do whatever they want him to do whatever that's what gives them that authority.
Yeah, how do you think that's treating Jesus? How so? Why not?
Probably asking him to do what they want and not giving him a chance to also ask them.
Why should Jesus do anything for them? Isn't he the master? I mean, I thought he was in charge, Mr. Gaffney, right? I mean, when you're working at Chipotle, not you, sir, but, and the person is the shift leader or whatever they're calling it these days, the manager or whatever. Well, I guess it's different from when I grew up, because I would never have gone to like when I worked at Acme. Burger King. It was back in the 80s. I would never have thought to say to my manager, I'm taking today off. Or I'm taking tomorrow off, I won't be here. I would go and say, excuse me, Mr. So-and-so, I have this issue, could I have it? But now I like hear people, kids in the bottom, they say, I have to go off tomorrow. All right. What are you going to do? Well, they fired you. Or at least you get a talking to. But that was when I was growing up back in the 80s. I don't know if is it still like that way? Would you ask nicely, or do you just tell the manager, hey, I'm going off tomorrow? Would you ask? All right. But it doesn't seem like a very nice thing, right? Jesus, I want you to do what? Do they even say master? Do they even say Lord or anything? Teacher. We want you to do whatever we ask. I haven't even told them what they're going to ask him yet, but they're already binding him, like, you got to do what we want you to do. There's something interesting about Mark's gospel, because, when, like, Matthew tells the story, he kind of cleans it up. He makes the apostles a little more respectful of Jesus. In Mark's gospel, there are many times where the apostles are kind of nasty towards Jesus. They're not respectful at all. Okay. And so Jesus is like, well, all right, what do you want? We want to sit at your right and left hand in glory. So we want to be basically your first and your second when you're in glory. Now that's interesting because Jesus isn't saying he doesn't typically call himself the Messiah, but he kind of does in the way he acts, in his way he's presenting himself. He accepts that they say you're going to come in glory or be in glory in the kingdom of God, like a king on a throne, and we want to sit each on the side of your throne. Like your first hand God and your second hand God. Out of all the apostles. So they kind of think very highly of themselves. Out of all the other apostles. And Jesus doesn't reject this. He doesn't no, you don't understand. I'm not the Messiah. No, he accepts it. He says, well, that's been reserved. There are people that's been reserved for other people. And anyways, can you drink the cup that I'm going to drink? He uses this metaphor of a cup. Of a cup. What's he referring to? Do you think he's referring to a literal cup having a meal? What do you think? It's Tetrel? Or do you think it's more something else? He's referring to something else. A cup. What do you think he might be referring to? Something good? Something bad? You want to pass it off to him? That's all right. We'll get to Mr. Hinkle. Let's stay with you for a moment. What do you think? You think it's something good? It's going to be something good? I have a baptism, which I have now. He only uses the word baptism. He uses the metaphor of baptism. I have a baptism. Something I'm going to be dunked in. And you be baptized in that same baptism? What do you want to say about that?
I'd say it could be symbolizing the sacrifice. Can you carry the burden I'm going to carry?
Could be. Yeah, could be. Well, all right, Mr. Gaffney.
It's going to be poison. Because they're like, oh, we're going to be, we want you to do this, even though we're going to stand beside you. That's weird. Why would you make the teacher do something when you're going to stand beside him? So,
Oh, you think they were thinking of killing Jesus? Well, that's interesting. That's come across that interpretation. But that's an interesting interpretation. I haven't thought about it. Very interesting. Get rid of Jesus and then we take. Like the ring of power. I get the ring of power. Then I may be the master. Right? Column fans. And you guys watch the Lord of the Rings series, or you guys too I can't tell what I'm not trying to talk down to you. I don't know what references to use anymore if you need.
I don't think we're too young. It's just that I don't think it's as interesting. Each of us, it's probably good.
God bless you, Mr. Hinkle. You say the quiet things out there. I appreciate
You don't have to
that.
hide them.
Anyway, okay. Cup of baptism. Jesus is going to be dunked in something. He's going to have to drink something. All right, what does he mean? Can you do this? And they say, yeah, we can. And Jesus says, okay, you will be baptized and you will drink from this cup, just like me. But then he gives them a little lesson on true authority. He says, authority should be service. I don't want it to be, I know amongst the Gentiles, the nations, authority is exercised as power. People have the ability to control others, and they do that. But that's not what it should be like with you. The greatest amongst you should be your slaves. And the first one amongst you should also be, and he says, be your slave. You should be like the last slave. For the Son of Man, and here's where we kind of get an idea of what he means by the metaphors. The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. All right? So a ransom, giving his life, dying, apparently. The Greek word used is lutron in Mark, where, Jesus was probably speaking Aramaic at the time, but Mark uses the word lutron, which is a ransom. It's something that is given over in exchange, did I do this already? I don't know if I talked about ransom before. Thank you, Ms. Lacey. God bless you. It's something given over to get something back. And it's kind of an exchange. Someone's held hostage and the kidnappers want a ransom. They want some, if you're on your computer and you download some file, okay? Just looking if I have I know I have Lutron somewhere around here. I just want to see if I actually, it might be under Mark, but anyways. If you're on your computer and unfortunately you download some file you shouldn't, and hackers or bad guys, computer guys get on your computer and they encrypt all your stuff and you get a little message. Well, you won't get a little message, Ms. Wanamaker, but you get a message on your screen that says all your files have been encrypted. You want them back? We want a ransom, $2 million, 2 million Bitcoins or something like that, Happens all the time. It's a real problem. It's become a real problem. It's just a ransom, an exchange. Otherwise, we'll destroy your data, or your data will never be unencrypted, or we'll kill the hostage, or we'll start sending you body parts in the mail, stuff. Anyways, if you don't give us this ransom. So that's how Jesus interprets his death. He apparently knew where his journey was leading, that people wanted him dead, and eventually he was going to be handed over to his enemies to die. But he sees it as a lutron, a ransom. Who's he ransoming, Mr. Tedeschi? Who do you think he's ransoming? Who's hostage?
Everybody?
Okay. All right. Yeah, okay. I'll go with that. Hostage in what way? Like every human being, right? Hostage in what way? In what way are humans hostages?
Sin?
Oh. Evil. Yeah. Is there a personification of sin? If the power of Christ compels. The power of Christ compels.
Was it? Hello, Regan. I'm volunteer.
Actually, it doesn't say that. Hello, Reagan. I'm Damien. What's your name?
What did she respond?
I don't know how we didn't get an X-ray. That was 70s. Man, that blew the copy. Well, does Christianity teach that there's a personification of evil? A person, a being that is completely committed to evil, destruction. Yes, the Catholics in your catechism, the church still believes in this. Yes. What is that? Who is that? What do we call this being? Now, Satan. The devil. Satan's just a term. Shatan in Hebrew simply means opponent. Like an opposing attorney in a court of law, what we call a Shatan. And that just gets, the Satan doesn't have, it's not his name actually, it's description of what he is. He opposes God's will. Okay? So yeah, remember what I told you about the kingdom of God. What's going on with the reign of God. Jesus is overturning, he's in a battle with everything and anything that is an opponent in opposition to God's will. So exorcisms are part of, he's in battle with Satan or evil unclean spirits. So the traditional interpretation, you can take it for what it's worth, but the church has never officially said it in any reason of what you have to believe about why Jesus died. And that's up to people's interpretation, because we don't know exactly. It doesn't really matter. He did die for sin. But it seems in Jesus' interpretation, he sees human beings and the world as it's enslaved in a hostage position with the devil. The devil has control, or at least exercises control. People, it doesn't mean, the devil's not God, okay? He's a creature just like us, all right? Very powerful creature, but he's no less a creature. He's not God, all right? So he's not like, there's God and there's the devil and they're fighting a fair fight or something. There's no fight between God and the devil. The devil just hates and wants to oppose. And human beings, we are apparently susceptible to that. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. All you have to do is kind of like walk down the streets of Philly at night and, I don't know if there's any better evidence for, like, number one, original sin, and number two, Satan. You find a guy with, like, 6 graves in his basement of people that he's killed. Yeah. Why'd you do it, Bob? They all looked at me the wrong way. Or they say, I heard voices telling me, well, you must be crazy. Okay. Maybe. But what is that impetus? What would give a person that impetus to even do that to another human being? For what reason? What benefit? What's benefit is it doing for the person? So in a sense, Jesus is going to give himself over to the devil. And we see this in the Gospels, this kind of idea in the Gospels, when Jesus is tempted by Satan in the Gospel of Luke. Remember, Jesus is out in the desert. Anyone remember this? Jesus is out in the desert for like 40 days, fasting and doing his thing before his ministry. And the devil confronts him. The devil's like, turn these stones into bread. If you're the Son of God, prove it to me. Prove to me you're the Son of God. I want to know who you are. Holy man. Or throw yourself off, the side of a building. God will protect you. He won't let you die. And blah, 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 blah. And then in Luke, he has this very interesting statement that, finally Jesus bests the devil. The devil leaves Jesus, but he doesn't go away. He only leaves him to return at his hour, when it's his time, which will be in the Garden of Gethsemane when Jesus is arrested. And this is all over the Gospel of John. When the people come to arrest Jesus in the garden, Judas and the other people, Judas Iscariot, Jesus says, this is your hour, the hour of darkness. Basically say, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to resist you. Do with me what you will. Their will is to do him harm, to kill him. So he allows it. But he's obedient. Okay, getting back to Philippians. Christians see this as an act of obedience. He was obedience unto death, probably to God. This was not that God is some kind of monster who's like, okay, I got to send my son down to die. But Jesus kind of lets things play out the way people want them to play out. Jesus isn't the puppet master. He's not like, okay, Judas Iscariot, he gives Jesus a plan. You see this sometimes in the movies, right? That they want to like Jesus. We see this with like The Last Temptation of Christ. It's back in the 80s, a movie back in the 80s and stuff like that. People play with this idea like Jesus and Judas Iscariot were kind of like in cahoots. Jesus gave, Judas his marching orders because he knew he had to die. So he chose, Judas to go betray him, and so he fulfill God's plan and stuff like that. No, Jesus is just a human. He acts like a human being doing his thing. But he has to deal with the choices of other. I got you. I'll finish this thought. He has to deal with the choices of other human beings who wish him ill. And sometimes people can't understand that because they think, well, what? Jesus is God. Why wouldn't he intervene or do something? But I mean, it's just like any other person, like Martin Luther King Jr., who was assassinated. He was just doing his thing. But another human being decided to end that. That was the only way he could think to bring finality to it. I think it's the same kind of situation with Jesus. He was obedient to death. He was not that God is a monster who demands blood sacrifice from his son. They got to kill my son, so I got to get Jesus to the cross. That's where the story is going. No, it's probably a more horrible message than that. This is what happens when a good man is in the hands of just other human beings. This is what they do when they have power over another person. Yes, Ms. Lacey?
Didn't Judas know, like, he ended up. It's sad. I'm not saying what he did. Right, I'm just wondering.
Oh, well, No, what do you think, Mr. Henkel?
He regrets the decision, but he doesn't go back to Jesus and say he throws the money back at people who gave it to him, then he goes to name himself. So he doesn't actually go back. He regrets it, but he doesn't actually go to Jesus physically to turn back to him.
Does he have to?
He should have.
Really? You should have?
Instead of, he turned to despair and gave up instead of going to ask for forgiveness.
I don't know. Did Jesus require that of someone? You have to come back to me face to face, or I won't forgive you?
When he's physically there, and you know where he's going to be, pretty an easy pass. At the very least, you shouldn't kill yourself to do it. You should
Oh no, I agree with that. Don't commit suicide.
try and turn into newbie, basically, kind of like what Peter did. He denied Christ 3 times instead of turning to despair and killing himself. He turned back to Christ.
Really? How did he?
Not physically, because Christ was already being beaten and not access to people, but he started teaching his ways and denying.
But wait a second. In the Gospel of Luke, it says that Jesus turned, after his denial, Jesus was there and turned to Peter and looked at him. Peter couldn't have right then and there said, I'm sorry?
It was when Jesus was captured, no.
Okay. All right. But he was apparently there in the presence of Jesus and within earshot. And Jesus turned and looked at him.
Jesus knew it was going to happen, so
All right.
that doesn't mean he could hear him.
True. That's true. Maybe he didn't hear him.
Especially, it was when Jesus was captured, there was probably a lot of emotion going on.
Sure, I would agree with that, yeah. What about after, though?
After torture,
But I mean after, the good after.
they asked after.
Yeah, why couldn't he sought Jesus, the risen Christ, out and said, that thing I did to you a few days ago, sorry.
I think Jesus knew with Peter's actions that he was turning a new being.
You think so?
I think so.
Well, Peter went back to fishing. And didn't go out and proclaim the message of Jesus after Jesus was gone. Huh?
He was the first pope.
Probably not, but that's a lot later, like 30 years later.
He turned his life to
All right. But why not Judas? I mean, it says in that Gospel of Matthew, Judas regretted what he did,
He took the easy way out.
which was killing himself.
For this scenario, yeah. Instead of working to reestablish it, just having to take himself out.
Okay. I still mention that Peter just went back to fishing. He didn't seem to seek Jesus out after that, but you're right. He did turn around because he was alive. He didn't kill himself. So it's kind of like despair versus hope.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to get at.
No, you got at it, sir. You got it fine. Yeah. Judas. The difference is that why isn't there a Saint Judas Iscariot? Because he lost hope. He had despair. There's nothing that Jesus could do for him for the awful thing that he did of betrayal. Yeah. But if we read the Gospels, all 4 of the Gospels talk about the fact that Judas apparently lost belief in Jesus a long time before he betrayed him. So it makes sense if what the story is accurate, that if he didn't believe in Jesus anyways, or he stopped believing, then how could Jesus forgive me? All right. Because of this, God greatly exalted Jesus and bestowed on him a name. And the rest of the song is about this name, devotes a lot of focus to the name of Jesus, really. The name at which every knee should bend, saying that, and every mouth should say that Jesus is the Lord, etc., and so forth. Okay? this word that's translated exalt, to lift up, does mean, it's actually kind of a weird word. It does mean to lift up, hupsoo. It's not a misspelling, hupsoo, to lift up or to elevate. But actually, it's kind of like an intensive, because hupso is like super, it means above. So it's like, almost like you said, God uber lifted him up, or really, really lifted him up. It's almost like an intensifier. It's a very weird little construction of the verb. And so some people say that, well, what does it mean? Is it a reference to the resurrection? That God, does it mean Jesus? Because, well, that word's never really used for the resurrection. Probably it's referring to Jesus' glorification, which includes the resurrection, I think. Jesus was lifted up, but even more lifted up than one might have expected. Not just lifted up from the grave, but lifted up and glorified. Being given a name, his name. The name is very important, certainly in Jewish culture and in the biblical culture. To know someone's name gives you power or authority over that person. Okay, so there's, that's important. So the fact that, it's not just for nothing that he says that Jesus was given a name, because Jesus already had a name, Ms. Farley, Yeshua, right? Yehoshua, he already had a name. So the song does not mean that like he was given a new name or something. Okay, it's, again, probably metaphor for a power or authority in this name, contained in this name, Jesus, not just Jesus anymore, but Jesus the Christ, who is Lord, who is Master, like God. And we see this idea in the description. Jesus is given a universal godlike lordship. He's not just Lord over the heavens, the skies, the supernatural realm. Okay, every knee should bend of those who are in heaven. Okay, so the angels, apparently, any souls that are in heaven in the presence of God. Does it include God? Isn't God in heaven? Does God bend his knee at the name of his Son? Well, I don't know. Probably not. Maybe that's going too far, Ms. Jones. But nevertheless, everything in heaven, everything on earth, as you would expect. But everything under the earth, even the netherworld, Sheol, the underworld, everyone in the underworld bows the knee at even the mention of Jesus Christ. To the glory of God the Father. Okay, Jesus is not called the Son in this hymn, but here it's implied because now God is a Father. God is specifically referred to as the Father, which implies a son or a child of some sort. Who's the child? Well, I think obviously for the Christians is Jesus. I mean, even early Christian writings, other Christian writings we have, Jesus is oftentimes called God's child, okay? His baby, in a sense. So it's glorifying God by doing this, by calling Jesus Lord. All right. So that's, scholars call this kind of a high, they talk about low Christology, which focuses on Jesus' humanity, and high Christology, which focuses on his divinity. I just call it Christology, how they view Jesus. Okay, Jesus is certainly human in the hymn, but he's also more than human than any human being. He's not, there's no one who's similar to him or like him. He is unique. So this gives us, an insight into how early Christians were talking about him at a very early stage. I'll pass over Colossians. The Messiah. So we get back to this. The Messiah, this idea of the Messiah. Where does this come into play? Descendant of King David, would come at the end of time to restore the kingdom of Israel, defeat her enemies, establish a reign of peace based on the observance of God's law. Are those Cheetos? Very nice. Very cheesy. The Mashiach. Our word Messiah actually comes from Aramaic Mashikah, which is based on the Hebrew word Mashiach, which means to pour someone who has oil poured on him or placed on his body. So an anointed one, the anointed one, the Messiah, the Christ, all mean the same thing. All right, so what's its relation to Jesus? Isn't Jesus the Messiah? Because as it says in the hymn to Philippians, he is Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is Lord. So we know very early on, apparently, his followers were calling him the Messiah. We're saying that Jesus was the Messiah. Even though if you read the Gospel of Mark and even the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus really doesn't say that anywhere. Like in the Gospel of Mark, one time he affirms that he's the Messiah at his trial. In Matthew's Gospel, he says, you say. That's what he says. He doesn't say, I am. But nowhere else does Jesus ever come out and say, I am the Messiah. Others say it about him, think it about him, sometimes. But if it were a point you wanted to prove, you'd think they want to hit you over the head with every piece of information they could to show you, see, he's the Messiah, but it's not necessarily clear from the Gospel of Mark. Matthew tries to clean that up. Matthew likes to show all sorts of prophecies, predictions related to the Messiah that he connects with the life of Jesus to show that, see, this aspect of Jesus' life fulfilled this prophecy of the Messiah and stuff like that. But he never puts the words in the mouth of Jesus. That's why I love the Gospel. They're honest. They could have. We weren't there when Matthew was writing. He could have, put into Jesus' mouth, oh yeah, Messiah, of course, is yes. How could you not how could you not believe that? No, he's trying to prove it through these prophecies. This really happened to Jesus, and don't you know, Prophet Zechariah said that would happen, the Messiah would come riding on a donkey into Jerusalem. Don't you know, Malachi said, the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem of Judea. That's where, I don't know how it happened, how Jesus got there, but everyone knows that he was born there. Isn't that interesting? Mark doesn't have those problems. He just tells you the story. So the Messiah, why wouldn't Jesus have been so clear? Yes. So what do you mean? Flesh that out, thought out for me, please. Plus. I don't judge, no problem. Go ahead, Ms. Lacey. Sorry to interrupt.
Come out and say he's the Messiah, and then getting Mark's house and he wants to show you that he's the Messiah, just to give you more feel like his action rather than what it says, because action are probably more accurate than the.
Okay. The actions maybe, show people more of his self-perception than just going around and saying, I'm the Christ, I'm the Christ, I'm the Christ. Okay, show me you're the Christ. Do you think he does that?
In Mark. But
Well, I guess, in Mark's Gospel.
he's using a lot of stories, and he's all these stories, without so many words, show people how to. Because we don't know exactly what Jesus said, right? So he's using his action instead to get the point across.
Well, if we don't know what Jesus actually said, how do we know what he actually did?
We don't know that either, but I think.
All right, well, then where's your argument go?
I think it's more likely that he did his action actually.
They would be more impressive, I guess. Okay. Well, let's look at his actions. Okay. I mean, I don't know how you prove he was a descendant of King David. I mean, I don't know what action, you just have to know his genealogy, right? Right.
Wasn't, I think he was a descendant of King David, Joseph
Yeah.
and Solomon and stuff like that.
Joseph was of the house of David, right? He was a descendant. Joseph was a descendant of David, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's.
Okay. All right. No. So yeah. So Joseph could vouch for that, right? You know, I am a descendant of David, assuming that he knows. You know, it's true. Okay, fine. I mean, I accept that. Was Joseph Jesus' father though? Really? I thought Luke said as was supposed. Huh? You've read the Gospel of Luke?
The only knows.
What are you doing to me, woman? Why are you reading the Bible?
What's
Shame on you! Yeah, I'm doing more! You're making me look bad. You look like you're learning stuff. No. I'm gonna get a bad reputation. Yeah, was Joseph Jesus' father? Yeah, Joseph was of the house of David. He's a descendant of David, which would have made his children the descendant. Yeah, any male children. Sure, I agree with that. But where do we go with that? Because from what my understanding,
Well-
Joseph was not.
Well, an angel came to Joseph himself, you know, Joseph, Mary, which was a virgin, was soon be pregnant with a son.
Okay, and he was the father?
Why are you doing this?
So the only one where Mary specifically like stated that all the other gospels, it's that she's supposed.
That's interesting, yes. Mark had that very weird statement at the synagogue where they say, isn't this Jesus, the son of Mary? Very weird to be identified by only your mother. It's just never happened. Never happened. Always your father. Never your mother. But he's called the son of Mary. Well, I don't know, but in my reading of Matthew's gospel and Luke's gospel, my impression, correct me if I'm wrong, was that Mary never had sexual activity. So it was a miracle that Jesus was conceived, and Joseph wasn't the father. So how could Jesus claim descent from King David? And it never identifies Mary as of the house of David, right? So.
There's just like most of the most possible is that just is supposed to be, not even admit. There's also supposed to be in the gospel. It's not flat out stated that he's his father. He's supposed. Like,
Yeah, Mary shows up quite a bit in Mark's gospel. Well, I should say quite a bit, but several times. But Joseph, Jesus' father is like MIA. Isn't that interesting? Why would Mark do that? Maybe Jesus has another father. Maybe Mary is more important than Joseph. Or likely Jesus. I don't know. I'm just saying. All right, well, it's a puzzle, this Abraham Bellamy, isn't it? It's a puzzle. How could Joseph, who's not really Jesus' legitimate father, biologically, how could Jesus then be a descendant of David? Interesting. Okay, so maybe there's a question mark over the first part of the Messiah. He would restore the kingdom of Israel. Okay, Ms. Lacey, did that happen? And if so, at what point did Jesus do that? Jesus didn't establish a throne in Jerusalem and restore the kingdom of Israel, the full kingdom, not Judah, but Israel and Judah, the whole thing. When did he do that, Mr. Tedeschi? You don't know. Did he do it all? Even briefly? Did he try? You're saying no, or you're saying you don't know?
I'm saying no, but I will.
Okay. Well, if he had, don't you think he might have known about it? Don't you think that would be like a really good proof that he's the Messiah? If he actually did restore the kingdom of Israel like the Messiah was supposed to.
Even then, people still,
What?
but even then, people still like,
Well, that's true, but I don't care if people believe in Jesus or not. A lot of people still don't believe in Jesus. I do. But, I mean, if I'm trying to, we're not supposed to try to convert Jews, but okay. You know, I'm not trying to convert Jews. But if I were trying to explain my belief in Jesus as the Christ, I mean, one of the first arguments that would be brought up is that he didn't fulfill the standards for the Messiah. Okay, a lot of Jews, I think, would accept he might have been a descendant of King David, but where the rubber hits the road, where's the kingdom that he was supposed to have established? Where'd it go? All right. So we'll move on from that one. When did Jesus defeat the enemies of Israel? Well, the enemies would be the Romans. They were the ones at the time oppressing the Jews. But I guess the Jews might have had other enemies. When did Jesus conquer and vanquish all the enemies of the Jews? Did he mount any military campaigns, Ms. Franco Zamora? Sweep his hand over the world and say, you know, I wiped you out, all you Romans, all you Ammonites and Moabites. When did he do that, Ms. Kittrell? Huh? That's my guess. That's the question. What do you think, Ms. Burris? What do you think? When did Jesus wipe out the enemies of Israel? Not sure? It's not clear though, right? I mean, if it were clear that he did it, then you might be sure, right? You could pinpoint it. You could be like, oh yeah, when Jesus did that. Okay, all right. Well, now let's get to the reign of peace. I mean, Jesus was all about peace and love, right? Following God's law. When did he do that? I'm sure, you know, I'm sure Jesus was at least successful with that as Wanamaker, right? He got all his followers to follow the law of Moses, and everyone started living in peace. When did that happen? When did he do that in the gospel? Huh? Still waiting. Last I checked, one of his 12 apostles betrayed him and then I read to you, right, last week, the other day, I got you. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, but not do what I tell you to do? So Jesus couldn't even keep his own disciples together. Yeah.
Can you explain this for me?
Yes.
Samuel 7 says,
Another Bible reader.
your house and your kingdom will continue working for all time, and your throne will be secure forever.
Yeah. Didn't God promise that to David?
Yeah. Is that how Jesus was related to it?
In what way? What do you mean?
About securing the throne?
Okay. But how did Jesus secure the throne? To secure the throne of Israel?
Yeah.
Did he establish himself as the king of Israel? No. At least I don't find any evidence of it. That's Jesus trying to set up a government, you know, with himself as the head.
I know David was one of the kings of Israel.
Oh, yes. And that's God's prophecy to David, making the promise that your kingdom will never end, so it'll be eternal. But, did it end? It didn't end?
Way after.
The kingdom of Judah? Yeah, read it to the end of the second book of Kings. On the second of people. Mr. Gaffney. Yes, sir. I'm a wolf in sheep's clothing, Mr. Hinkle. I'm destroying your faith. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Before you put the armor on, you have to beat it, right? You have to beat it. Put it in the fire, which sometimes causes pain. To make it strong, stronger. and then you can put the armor on. See, I've done PhD biblical study. I know what's before you if you want to do these things. But anyways, what it tells me, and I'm not going to lie, no, Jesus fulfills none of the expectations of the Messiah for the Jews. It's like most of the Jews didn't know what he was. They thought he's a prophet, he's some weirdo, he's somehow he's John the Baptist come back from Sheol, from the dead, Very few apparently were saying, oh yeah, he's the Messiah, because he wasn't acting like the Messiah. He wasn't doing what people thought the Messiah was supposed to do. The Messiah was supposed to be a warrior king who would kill and conquer all the enemies of Israel, make everyone follow the law, and reign as an actual king forever. And Jesus seemed to have no interest in any of that. And yet he was doing things, again, like with the whole God question, he was doing things that seemed to be Christ-like in some ways. Aspects of the Messiah. But Jesus decided what kind of Messiah he wanted to be. Again, just like with the Sermon on the Mount. This is his conception of Messiah. He's not going to be kind of rammed or crammed into what the Jewish society of the time thinks the Messiah is supposed to be. Okay, so there's a believe in an anointed one. In the Bible, only 3 types of people are anointed, have oil poured on them. It doesn't mean there couldn't have been others, but at least these are the most significant ones. Priests were anointed when a man was installed into the priesthood of the temple, especially the high priest. Oil will be poured all over his body, okay, that it would flow over his beard, as it says. So priests were anointed for worship in the temple. Prophets sometimes. It's very rare, but it is mentioned in Psalm 105. Yeah, I'll read it myself. Just one verse, Psalm 105, verse 15. Yes, okay, Psalm 105, it says, I'll read it to you. Do not touch my anointed ones, to my prophets do no harm. So if we want to do that literally from the Hebrew would be, don't touch my Mashiach, my Messiah. Okay, which is referring to the prophets. Okay, there's a parallelism going on here. Who is the Messiah? Or who are God's messiahs? They are the prophets. Okay, probably, more, being more anointed in the Spirit of God. We don't have any examples of prophets actually having oil poured over them in the rest of the Old Testament. It probably is more like an anointing in God's power and His Spirit. But nevertheless, prophets are designated as Mashiach. They are also messiahs. And then, of course, the kings of Israel. It was part of the ceremony to anoint a king. Okay? So priests, prophets, and kings. And all of these are applied to Jesus. Jesus is a priest because he offers sacrifice, which is himself. He is the offering. He is a prophet because he has a message from God that he proclaims. Actually, he is God. And he is the king. He is a ruler. He is a leader. So he fits that bill, maybe not exactly as Jews would like, but yes. Now we want to get to 2 Samuel that Ms. Abraham Bellamere brought up. Okay, this man David. Okay, there was the idea of a king savior, but where did that come from? Okay, it comes from the second book of Samuel. King David, this man King David, who was one of the kings. He wasn't the first king of the Jews, but he's considered the greatest of the kings of the Jews. We think he lived around 1000 BC. It's just a guess. Okay, we don't have any sure dates. Do we have any archaeological evidence? Not of him directly. They have found some things that mention the house of David. Okay, so from surrounding cultures that mention the house of David. So, apparently he was a real person. But obviously, outside the Bible, we know next to nothing about him, really nothing. But anyways, he's considered the greatest of the kings. He was fully in love with God. And he was the king of the United Kingdom, which existed around 1020 to 922. Okay, modern day Israel these were the boundaries. Modern day Israel and also Palestine. Southern Syria, southern Lebanon, countries of southern Syria, southern Lebanon. That's basically the extent of the United Kingdom under King David. So he's important. And he, as I said, he loves God, and God loves him. And in the second book of Samuel, this man Samuel is a prophet figure. He's a prophet, considered like maybe the first of the prophets. Shmuel, Samuel. But it's Nathan, though. It's his son. I don't think it's Samuel. Is it Samuel or Nathan who goes to him? Huh? It's Nathan, who is David's son. One of David's sons functions as a prophet in the kingly court. Usually they had this in the court. You would have prophets, you would have seers who would consult something. We don't know exactly what they're called, Urim and Thummim, but we're not sure. But some kind of articles of stuff they would look at to kind of discern the will of God for the king and stuff like that. So David's son, as one of his sons, functions as a prophet in the royal court. And I'll end with this because I know. And David wants to build a temple to God. He wants to build a house for God. He wants to show his love for God by building, one single place of worship, an official place of worship for God. That's going to be his present to God. And so, I said I'm going to end with this, but I'm not like ending literally, right, Mr. Rosley? I'm still talking, right? So God sends a dream to Nathan the prophet, his son, and says, basically, go tell him, look, knucklehead, I don't need a house, okay? I'm God, okay? I don't need a house to live in. But if you're going to build me a house, you need to build me a go ahead. But you know what I'm going to do for you, David? I'm going to build you a house, an eternal house that will never end. And he's not talking literally about a house or a building. He's talking about the house of David's descendants after him, that will never end. Which does end, actually. So you're going to have to ask God about that one at Sunday Mass, about... God bless you all. I will see you next Thursday. Where's my... There. You're welcome, Miss Franco Zamora. Have a good day. I haven't read any paper yet. Can I read it? Now? I'll look at it. Have a good day. All right. Well,